Hello, today I'm joined by my friend James Moore from Genmar IT. How you doing, James?
Hi David. Yeah, good. Thank you, mate. Good, thanks.
Nice to have you with us. We bump into each other an awful lot at conferences and various different things, but you also are a very safe pair of hands, and we can say this at Kerfuffle because we can endorse your service because you provide us with service here. And so you are great behind the scenes at looking after IT and all the cyber security that goes with it. And when things go wrong with tech, who do we call? We tend to call Genmar, and they deal with it really well. So thanks for joining us again today. But today, what we're talking about is almost something that I seem to be talking about in every discussion now, about prop tech and estate agents. AI is almost something that I just cannot get away from. But the truth is, with all of the sort of AI tech out there, it is very confusing, isn't it, for agents to sort of know what should be automated, what shouldn't they automate, what is worth investing in, what is just going to end up costing them more. There's an awful lot of AI cruising around out there as almost like as a solution looking for a problem. And there are some wonderful bits that genuinely will solve a problem and answer that. So we wanted to talk to the experts, and I suppose we should start by saying your advice on this matter is actually worth listening to because you're independent. You're not selling an AI product, are you?
Yeah, that's it. I think it's a bit like the Wild West out there now with AI software and things. I speak to agents every day who are buying more and more different AI sort of software products from different people who are selling them the world when they do the sort of first demo and things for it. And don't get me wrong, there are lots of really good bits of AI software out there that people are implementing and seeing really good results from. But I think there's also a lot out there that sells a big game, and actually when you start using it, it doesn't really deliver. And sometimes just it's about how you implement it rather than the actual software itself. Is there a strategy behind it? Are we getting the buy-in from the staff and things as well around it? Because that's something that we see quite a lot is that, the decision makers, managing directors and things of businesses will say, I've got this great new software, I did a demo for it, let's go. And actually the people using it on the ground aren't that bought into it. And
Yeah.
that can cause its
You,
own set of
you, you
problems.
need you need that all-round buy-in. Okay, well, I suppose there's a bit of an education piece then around that. But when you're talking to estate agents and they're thinking about things that they can automate, what is the first things that they should consider automating and what should they absolutely avoid automating?
Yeah, I think, the first things we look at is the sort of non-sexy stuff. I think that's sort of the trick with this sometimes is that sometimes the really customer-facing automations look like the best thing to start with because it's the most obvious. But almost that's the last thing you want to look at because it has inherently the most risk with it as well. Doing things that are directly pushing automation to your clients, if something goes wrong, they're immediately going to see the impact of that. Whereas a lot of the time, the sort of back end admin parts of the business that are actually there's sort of more low-hanging fruit there in terms of what can be automated. The first things we look at is integration between different systems. I think I saw a stat the other day that estate agents have something like 26 different prop tech solutions in place. I
Yes.
think it might have even been a kerfuffle stat actually that I
I think
saw.
it is a
Yeah,
kerfuffle.
there you
Hey,
go.
I was smiling because I'm like, that's one of ours. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure. But you're right. I mean, that's an average of 26. Very often it's more than that. All the tech that we sign up to, subscriptions are great, aren't they? Because we all forget about them. So we sign,
Yeah.
and it's the same in our personal lives as well. We all sign up to a Netflix here and a Prime there, and before you know it, your account is littered with direct debits and you don't really understand where they came from. And I think the real question is, and you'll know this better than most, is that, are are we using the tech that we've subscribed to? And if we think it's a good idea as, say, the leaders of a business, does that filter down then to the staff as well? Because you're right, you need that buy-in, don't you, from your team to implement these things?
Yeah. And is it talking to each other? You know, if you've got these 26 bits of software, for instance, a lot of them do have integration, some of them don't, you know, but if they do, is it turned on? And have we configured the settings to enable data to communicate between these different platforms that we're using? Because that's such a huge time saver. The amount of times we go in and do our sort of audit to sort of readiness for automation, you're looking at it and seeing that there's people that are manually copying data over from one system to another. Um,
Well, let's jump on that for a minute because I know we do an audit just for agents where we go through their tech stack and we work out what they're using and not using and we can give that practical advice from Kerfuffle's point of view because we see an awful lot of this tech. We know what's working for agents and not. But from a an IT point of view, how do you go about auditing or assessing an agent's current tech stack and sort of trying to work out whether or not they're even ready for something like AI because that is it, it's advanced in some ways some parts of the AI process is out of their hands. It kind of just runs by itself and some businesses might not be ready for it.
Yeah, yeah, it's so true. Yeah, I think the process that we've worked out for this, you know, because it originally started where, you know, what was it, a year, 2 years ago, I guess, when ChatGPT and things really became very prevalent, and the big conversation about AI first started kicking off. We would have lots of people coming to us and saying, look, we want to implement AI in our business. Where do we start? And it is tricky, you know, it's tricky to know the answer to that. So the process that we defined for it was to just zoom right out of that conversation and just start looking at the basics of what business processes do you have? What are we actually doing? And you just really boil it down to the most simple form of let's look at the departments in the business, look at your sales department, your lettings department, your property management, and make a flow chart literally of the processes that we're doing in the business, as if you're describing to a complete stranger how your business works and put that in a flow chart. And the great thing about doing that is sometimes people find that there's actually just streamlining things that you can do in the business so that doesn't require any technology at all. You just find, friction points in the business just by doing that process.
Yeah.
But while you're doing it, you're effectively writing down how long each of those steps take, and how frequently you're doing them and who's doing them. And that then lets you build out what we call the automation ROI report, which is here's how much time we're spending on these repetitive tasks. And then we can go away and work out a plan to say how you can automate some of those tasks away, which will then show you, you know, the X many hours a day or a month that are currently being used in the business. Here's how much you could save if you automate some of those tasks out. And some of the time that's to do using AI and some fun tools and things that we can find to do some flashy AI processes that will speed up. But sometimes it's the boring stuff. Like I say, it's just a case of here's how we connect, you know, Repeat to your marketing tool or
Yeah.
whatever it's going to be, and
Yeah.
just make it so there's not a person sitting behind the scenes manually copying data out into an Excel sheet every day or something, you know?
Yeah, it's amazing how often we catch, people doing that. That there's a lot of manual processes, and sometimes, although they're tedious, there can be a lot of comfort for people because it makes them feel like they're doing something. They've
Yeah.
got ownership of it. So I suppose trusting the technology that we're using as well is part of it. So can you? I mean, I'll try and sort of combine the next couple of questions together because, to be honest with you. I think they kind of feed into each other. I was going to ask you what the real cost is of getting AI wrong, if you like, and doing it properly, and also then sort of I was going to ask you for an example of automation that saves agents time or money or whatever it is that it's meant to be saving them. But I think they both probably speak from the same corner, if you like. So I'll throw both of those at you together.
Yeah, I think, you know, in terms of what's the cost of doing it wrong, I mean, there's a few things that we've seen there. I think the biggest one that we see, which we've already talked about, is this perception of the change that's being made with the staff. And what you can do by accident, by implementing things poorly, is having this negative perception of AI and automation throughout the business. We've seen it before. People find a really cool tool that they want to use off the shelf, and they do a demo of it. I think it's really good. They make some top level decisions, and then go out to all the staff and say, "Hey, everyone, we're now using this tool. It's going to save loads of time. Everyone's going to love it." Don't do any training with it. Don't put any strategy behind it. And then the next thing is people are actually using it in the day-to-day work, and it's causing them more stress, more pain, putting bottlenecks in what they're doing. And then they get the perception of, AI and automation isn't good. It's actually causing more stress than it would have done without it. And then that really impacts you when you want to make the next decision, when you want to find the next tool or want to put the next automation, you're going to get that feedback from people. We've tried this before, it didn't work, so why would it work this time?
Yeah.
So getting it right the first time and having a proper strategy behind it really then helps you with that perception with the team and getting more buy-in from everyone because you do need it. Ultimately, the
Yeah, that
people that
makes
are
a
going
lot
to
of
be using the
sense.
tool every day are going to be the ones that really decide whether it works or not. Um, yeah, so that's a tricky one. The other one is just about again taking the time to plan out the strategy for these things because what we've seen a lot is that people buy these tools, start using them, they don't fulfill the requirement that they originally thought, so they sort of push them to the side. And you end up with people that I've seen they've got 5 or 6 AI tools that they've purchased that they're just not using anymore. And you're just paying like literally just the cost of those tools, then are just sitting around without being used. But in terms of like a real world, use case, of
Yeah.
things that we've seen that has worked for people, like ones that we've worked on. Um, One is like a phone system integration that we helped build out. So we developed a phone system integration between the phone system that we resell and a bunch of the property CRMs like Reapit and Street and Loop. And what that does is when you finish a phone call, it takes the transcription of the data from that call that you've had and saves that into the CRM. So we were seeing that estate agents were, finishing a call, and as soon as they got off the call, they were then going to the CRM, typing out, "I've just spoken to Mrs. Jones. She says this, blah 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 blah." You know,
Wait, James, I'm going to correct you. Being an agent for many years and managing teams, I'm going to just tell you now that very often putting down the phone to Mrs. Jones and then going back to the CRM and updating the notes, it doesn't happen as often as it should do. And I
yeah.
think
Well,
that's the
that's a great
point
point.
that you're making as well, is that yes, before we had a manual process, but that manual process relies on somebody either having the willingness to do it or remember to do it, or if the phone rings again, are
Yeah.
you instantly diving into that? Do you say, okay, you know what? I spoke to James 10 minutes ago. I'll still remember it after I come off this next call. And then you come off the next call, you make a cup of coffee, you have a sandwich, and before you know it, that conversation with James is a very distant memory. So I think the integration that you've built there and that you're talking of re relies on doesn't rely on David remembering anything or being particularly motivated to do the notes. And I think that as an office manager's dream, if you like, as a branch manager's dream, it is a dream because we've been arguing with people for years, trying to get them, please, please, please update the notes because the CRM's great and and it's very helpful. But if the business only really benefits from it if people update it accurately, don't they? So I think your integration takes care of that wholesale, doesn't it?
That's it. Yeah. It stemmed from those conversations I talked about mapping out the processes in the business, So we were talking with agents who are coming to us and saying they're trying to save time using automation and AI tools. We did that process where we zoomed out, looked at what they're doing, built the flow chart out of what tasks are being done in the business, and we saw for a few of them that they're spending a hell of a lot of time writing notes, or at least, like you say, the managers think that everyone is spending a lot of
Yeah.
time writing a lot of notes in the CRMs after phone calls are happening. So that's an
Well,
example where, we implemented it and we've seen massive time savings, and like you say, the data is now more accurate because it's in there and you can pull reports out and
and
things.
and all of this stuff, it has to be said, all of this stuff, and it's all great. We talk about tools and implementation that kind of makes an agent's life easier. But the bottom line is, for me anyway, in my experience with PropTech only works if it actually makes customer experience better as well. And I think this does, doesn't it? Because it gives us a more with the integration you were talking about. we're going to have more detail, we're going to have more notes, and there's also more accountability. We've not got anywhere to hide. So if James handles a call and he goes, "Yeah, I had a lovely call with Mrs. Johnson, and she sounded fairly positive about this," but in actual fact, the call wasn't particularly positive. The AI will now sort of pick up on that. And there's things like sentiment analysis and so on that add on to these sort of things that instantly sort of give us an idea of how the call went, how the tone of the conversation with clients is going. If there is one particular member of the team that is not handling the calls in the way that you'd want, you can spot that more easily now. And I think that makes customer service get better as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Yeah, you're totally right. The accountability piece is huge with it. And because you were talking before about when you're, you know, sometimes missing to add notes and things. I guess if you're had a bad phone call, that's probably the call that you're not going to want to add the notes on for
Correct,
afterwards.
correct. There's a bit of note avoidance there. So advising sort of agents who are now sort of being presented with tons and tons of AI solutions. I mean, we see them very much on the communication end of things. So, call answering systems and omni messaging platforms and all this sort of stuff. But what should agents be looking for? What should they be watching out for as well when it comes to evaluating AI solutions? Because there's a lot that still is very much in beta mode and hasn't really been tested on the open road. And there's a sense that these companies, some of the newer AI companies, are looking to gain traction. They can only do that by signing up a significant amount of users. They can only do that by making big promises. And some of this stuff isn't roadworthy at the moment. So, what do you advise us who are, we're being approached, we're seeing this sort of tech? How do we take it from there?
Yeah, I think first thing would be get first-hand testimonials from people that have already used the product. That's a nice, easy way of cutting through some of the claims that people might make about tools. So, go and speak to Kerfuffle. I'm sure they'll be able to help you find another agent that's already used something and get some first-hand experience from them. But other than that, I think it's, do the calculations in terms of your return on investment. I've seen really big claims from AI tools that say, oh, we've done our own independent surveys and found that this software could save thousands of hours a month, and I think the key thing is everyone's business is different. Are you actually spending that time on that process at the moment? And by doing that process of looking through the tasks and actions you're doing in the business as it currently stands, you will then work out your priorities of what needs to be automated first. Don't just go for the flashiest thing for the first person that's going to come and show you a demo. Actually take the time to sit down and say, what are we doing in the business? Where are we spending our time doing repetitive tasks? And it might be that, the demo that you're doing for the new AI chat bot or something that someone wants to sell you does fix the problem of the highest, ROI that you'll get back from sort of automating tasks. But I think of a lot of the time it might not be. And you need to work that out for yourself because every business is different, so do your calculations, work out where you're spending your own time. Then go and find the tools that answer those questions. If you find that all of your time is being spent reporting, for instance, go and look for some AI tools that speed up the reporting process. Get some first-hand testimonials from people that are already using it. And then the last thing I would say is to make sure that the company that's providing these tools has a nice onboarding and support process behind it. I think going off what you were just saying, David, about new companies and they need to get some money in, I've seen a lot of companies that just aren't investing in that support and onboarding infrastructure. They've made a really cool tool and they've got, getting some buy-in, a lot of money being spent on marketing. But actually, once you're in, you're up to your own devices then to work out how it works.
If I hear the phrase critical mass one more time, but we talk about that a lot, and it's almost like an estate agent opening up a business hasn't really sold a house ever, but needs the clients and needs the stock in order to practice selling those houses and see whether practically they've got a process and a system that can work. And I with evolving tech and AI is fast evolving, isn't it? it's getting better and better every day. And you mentioned we first saw sort of Chat GPT 2 or 3 years ago, and we all kind of used it to help us write emails or ask it random questions, and that was good. It then sort of was able to create imagery for us. It can now talk to other things. So we can see how quickly that's evolved, if you like. We know the rest of AI, the other AI solutions are also evolving rapidly. And I think because of that, these companies sometimes that are purporting solutions for people, they haven't quite nailed it because they're still growing as well and they're still evolving. So you want something that's tried and tested, and I think you're right. I think that's one of the things we try to preach over here at Kerfuffle is that you should only really be buying tech that other people have used, that you can get peer reviews from, and that you can actually sort of talk to them, and that those reviews are genuine. So I think that's more than worthwhile. Just from an IT kind of infrastructure point of view, and this is a bit more boring because we talk about hardware now rather than software or systems. Um, how much effort do you think agents should be making to sort of invest in the actual hardware that they've got to? Do we need to be operating at a certain speed in order to? Because AI takes up quite a bit of space, memory, and you'll soon slow down your system if you're trying to use advanced tech, even if it sits in the cloud. Do you need sort of are there minimum operating requirements? Put it that way.
So you're trying to do me a favor here and let me talk about the boring
I'm trying to
IT
get you
side.
to talk about what you do really well, and I know that. Because how often
Yeah.
do I call and go, James, it's not working. I need more power, man.
Yeah, you're totally right. And I think, the history of Genmar is an IT company, and that is the backbone of what we do is to look after estate agents' IT infrastructure. So that's, networks and servers and computers and things. And yeah, I think it's often something that's not looked at very frequently with people. It's often sort of left behind because it's not sexy, it's not interesting. It's something that needs to be done for everything to operate on, but it's not gonna, revolutionize your business if you just have nice computers. But I totally agree with what you're saying. I think the more and more software tool sets and things that people are using, the more infrastructure requirements there are around that as well. So, doing regular reviews of your IT assets is a really important thing for everyone to do, not just for performance, but also for security as well. If you've got
Yes.
really old Windows 10 laptops that are sitting around that some of your staff are still using, that's a security risk. So you should be doing, every 3 months, every 6 months, looking at your list of hardware, who's got the oldest stuff, and then putting a budget together around that to say, let's replace these devices, and try and get a schedule where you're doing that every 5 to 6 years or so with everything.
And that security is really important, isn't it? Because let's face it, as agents, we've got all those kind of confidentiality requirements, GDPR and the rest of it. But we now use different devices. There could be personal devices. There can be, laptops is one thing. You've then got tablets, you've got phones, you've got people that are even accessing their diaries off their watches and various different things. If you don't have the right security in place, we are likely to compromise customer details. And sometimes in the throw of sort of trying to implement technology, we don't give that enough thought, do we? We just kind of go, well, it'll be okay till it's not okay, right?
Yeah, yeah, and it bleeds into what we're talking about with the landscape of the sort of AI software space and things as well. A big part of cybersecurity best practices for a business is to do that risk analysis when you onboard new suppliers. So yeah, if there is a new software company that's made some very interesting AI tool that you want to use, you really should be digging into who they are and what their security practices are, because one of the most common ways for data to be exposed for businesses is not because you get hacked in your business. It's because actually the software that you just purchased from a company that was made by a man in his bedroom and didn't go through the normal due diligence processes. He gets compromised or they get compromised. and they've got a server full of all your data and all of your customers' data as well. So you should be doing that vetting process when you're looking at new suppliers and vendors that you're working with as well.
Not to say that men working in their bedrooms is not a good thing. Some of them are very safe, but you're right. Anybody, and with vibe coding and all the sort of stuff that you hear about these days, anyone with an idea can sort of make it come to life. And that's the beauty of technology. It is now kind of responding to us, but it doesn't necessarily mean we all know what we're doing with it or that we've researched the security of it. So I'm going to encourage anybody that's watching this, reading this, listening to this to if you have any queries about IT, I know that we all think we're very proficient when it comes to using computers because it's part and parcel of our daily lives, but you need to make sure you have the right support in the background there. I know we couldn't do it without Genmar at some of our most critical junctures and security as well. No one's immune to it. We need to sort of keep on top of that as much as possible. So highly recommend reaching out to James and his team. They're lovely, friendly people, but most importantly, they actually know what they're talking about as well. James, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, David. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.